Introducing Whipped into a New Shape, Navigating Next Generation TV, moderated by Andrew Wallenstein, co-editor-in-chief, Variety.
Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here with my esteemed panelists for an interesting conversation. What I'm going to ask them to do is introduce themselves briefly first and tell them a bit about what they're doing for their company, and then we'll get into the grand OTT of it all. So please, Richard, take it away.
Thank you, Andy. My name is Richard Au. I work at Amazon, and I lead the U.S. channels business for the Amazon Video service. And so the best way to think about channels and Amazon Video is we have 3 different ways that our customers interact with us and watch content. They can watch Prime Video, where we have a broad selection of Amazon original programming and licensed content that we make available for no extra charge for Prime members and Prime Video members. We have a transactional video store where our customers can rent or buy movies or TV shows. And then we have our channels business, which is available here in the US and has launched in the UK and Germany. Channels is basically our way of making more content available to our customers. We want to be a complete over-the-top solution for our customers, and one of the ways to do that is adding more selection of content. And so we have over 100 channels that are available today here in the US, including HBO, Showtime, and Starz. And our customers who are Prime members subscribe to these channels on a monthly basis and watch everything and consume it through their Amazon Video app.
Terrific.
I'm Jason Flick, CEO, co-founder of You.i TV. We're helping some of the biggest companies, media companies in the world, kind of own the attention, right? That's the big battle we're at, or own the glass, as we like to say, consistently. So look forward to kind of sharing some of the experiments they've done with their OTT and new ways of monetization that they've been doing with our technology.
Lisa Holme, I lead content acquisition for Hulu. What that means is TV shows, movies, kids programming, anything that's on Hulu's SVOD service that is not an original series. My team does the deal for. That also includes the content strategy, what content do we want on the service, how much of it do we need, as well as negotiating the deals.
Hi, I'm Amy Powell. I'm the president of Paramount Television and Digital. We produce content for all platforms from SVOD to network, free cable, and digital platforms. It's a small sort of startup television company that we started about 4 years ago.
Good morning, Eric Ratchman. I lead content distribution for Univision. So that's distribution of our traditional Spanish language networks of Univision, Unimas, UDN, as well as our El Rey and Fusion English language networks to traditional cable satellite operators like DirecTV and Comcast, as well as new over-the-top entrants like DirecTV Now or YouTube, as well as SVOD players, Hulu, Netflix, and new players like Facebook who are getting into video. So all of that distribution. We also distribute a bunch of new digital content from The Onion, The Root, and Gizmodo content that we've acquired recently.
And I'm Jed Tarpey. I'm the head of the media and entertainment sales team at Twitter, based here in LA. My team works across all the movie, TV, streaming, music, news, publishing verticals at Twitter.
Great. Like I said, lots of interesting different perspectives into this crazy space that we call OTT, the content that streams, not the typical broadcast or cable content by any means. The thing that I find most interesting that I wanted to hear you guys talk about is I don't know how people like you are able to set strategy 6 months, 1 year in advance when the rate of change seems to be tremendous. Who wants to sort of touch that first? How do you sort of keep up and give that long range?
I'll say two things. So first of all, I think the groups, and it's usually a brand that gets to play with some of these, and letting the brands have that power and give them that startup feel. Like we've had the most successful, fun stuff that was happen when it was kind of a small brand they got to play with, and then the bigger brands go and look at some of those new ones. Filmstruck and Turner, for example, really skunkworks teams able to do some cool stuff. So I think that's important, and then choosing the right technology partners too. I mean, we certainly see projects, 6 or 7 companies involved, and you've got to choose those right tech partners that are aligned with what you want to do. If it's truly disruptive, choose partners that are looking for disruptive. If you just want tried and true, pick those right partners.
I think the same can be said from the content perspective. When we look at our long-range plan and our short-term plan, we're looking at not only distribution and platforms, but also content. And we produced recently a show called 13 Reasons Why with Netflix, which was looking at teenage suicide through the lens of a book by an author named Jay Asher. And part of that was thinking about topics that are topical and will create buzz and be really zeitgeisty and break out of the clutter that is television. So I think it's a conversation about both content and the creative behind it, as well as the distribution and partnerships.
I was going to say the same thing. For us, it starts with being authentic and culturally relevant in the Spanish language space, especially. And we do that through, in the news genre, especially speaking to our audience. In music, which if you look at the #1 song in America this week, it's Despacito, Spanish language. Sports, being in soccer, which is, the only sport that's rising in ratings this last year. And telenovelas and entertainment, continuing to speak to our audience. And if we continue to invest in those, we know that long term, we invest in the right partners and continue to distribute that content, we will find our audience.
I would just add on to that as well. Data is a big driver of that. So if we look at Twitter and Twitter's strategy for live video, if we look at 9 months ago, there was 0 live video on the platform. And you look at, in Q1 of this year, we had over 800 hours of live video, right? So what drove that was data. We know that people are coming, Twitter and TV are synonymous together. People come to Twitter to tweet about what they're watching on TV. So all of a sudden we see there's this huge demand for TV type content. The conversation is already there. So that then helps us inform, this is what we should do as a company moving forward.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that, which is to say, so we think about licensing content to grow our subscriber base, and the next million and the next million and the next million subscribers aren't going to be dramatically different from the subscribers we have. And so we can learn from who we have, what are they responding to, what's working. Because change, while rapid, and that's certainly what keeps the job interesting, is always incremental, right? So you're sort of studying what's going on now to inform what to do next and what to do next.
One of the things that I think is interesting is even though the rate of change has been indeed rapid, consumers around the world want to watch great content. And there is a tremendous amount of great content that's being produced, whether it's live or live events or otherwise. As we look at how we can deliver the best service for our customers, we look at it from a global perspective. And so Prime Video is available in over 200 countries around the world, and we want to make available content that is globally appealing to our customer base, but also look for content that really has a strong local a component to it as well. And so I think even though things are changing, one of the constants is the fact that people are always looking for great content to watch. Video consumption continues to be very, very high.
Yes, but video is also something that is very much supplied by the existing pay TV system. And so the central challenge for a lot of you guys is making that viable outside that system. Although with Amazon, what's interesting with your channels business is it's kind of a blending of the two, where you, for those who don't know, you're able to, on top of your Prime membership, take certain channels like HBO that you would have otherwise gotten through your pay TV provider's basic subscription channel package, So the question is that really the world we're all headed to? We tend to think of pay TV and streaming as separate things, but are we all sort of planning here for some sense of integration between the two?
I was going to say, and related to that is just closing this loop, right? So it was this one-way stream for so many years where you sent it out and you kind of guessed in the future based on the data that came in. Now it's a complete system. So back to your data point, how consistently can you collect that data? what can you do with it? And there's tons of rocket science going on once you have that data. And then how can you consistently execute on when you have that data? Is it more interactive ads? Is it different content? Is it different ways to engage with the content? But looking at that loop, I think the winners are the ones that are really looking at that whole loop. And then whatever comes out of that can still be delivered through the traditional system. But looking at that loop, we heard that this morning, right? James doesn't listen to his Nielsen data. He looks totally at his YouTube and data and numbers to really drive what works for him.
I mean, I think the lines are really blurring between pay TV and digital. So you've got traditional pay TV guys like Dish and Direct who are launching virtual MVPDs, digital guys like us and YouTube and Amazon launching something that looks more like a traditional MVPD. And all of the line, I mean, that's one traditional line. There are 1,000 others that are all getting blurry, which I think is maybe disruptive in the near term, but ultimately really good for the consumer, because ultimately they want what they want to watch, and the harder we all make it for them by drawing those lines, the worse it will sort of leave the consumer.
Yeah, ultimately the consumer wants those products together, right? I think the consumer they want live and they want a deep library, and they want those products together. They don't want, the lines we draw are arbitrary from a windowing perspective, and from a consumer perspective, they want those products together. And so I think what Hulu is doing by bringing those products together, or Amazon is ultimately doing by bringing those products together, those are leading the way to where the consumer wants to go.
Yeah, just this last weekend, we actually tested something with TNT. So typically we've been doing more like event-based things, like, you know, PGA Tour or the NFL last season, things like that. But we did a test with TNT for Claws where we aired the premiere. As soon as the premiere on air had finished, so it was like 2 hours before the West Coast feed. So we share that data back to James' point, we share that data back with them to help them inform them of, like, is this something that's a viable strategy moving forward? But I think we're going to continue doing those types of things to blur the lines a little bit more.
Well, it is interesting to hear someone representing on the social side, not just from a promotional perspective, as I think we've kind of typically looked at it, but as a distribution point in and of itself. Amy, for you, would you be, say, a year or two ago, thinking about Twitter, Facebook, these kind of companies as places to sell content as opposed to just promoting? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I used to work in marketing, so yes. But I think, for example, we all talk about how nobody thought about Netflix until as a real serious buyer of a high-end premium drama until House of Cards, which really everybody involved with that deserves a lot of credit for sort of revolutionizing the television space, I think, for the rest of us. And I think Amazon has a lot of great shows which have proved Prime to be an incredibly viable platform, as same with Handmaids of Hulu, and you could go on. And we have a show, Berlin Station, on Epix, which I think is really helping prove the power of all of these new channels. So for us, it's funny, I saw the Claws promotion, it was great. And I think when you can actually correlate the buzz with the quality of the show, it becomes a really fantastic distribution platform. I think where it gets scary is if you don't have the quality show to uphold the buzz, as we're seeing in the feature business vis-a-vis Rotten Tomatoes sort of crushing a weekend for some movies. If you have the quality show, which we all hope we are when we're producing, hopefully at our best abilities, then you want to use social as a distribution platform, because you can build buzz and distribute to a wide audience and see the organic growth, which 13 Reasons is an example of how we saw the organic growth of a show go wildfire overnight because of social.
And to carry on, like my point earlier regarding data, like our decisions are being made because of the data of those types of things. So again, James and I were talking earlier, but we're not going to distribute something where there's no existing conversation already. Right? It has to be something that has to provide incrementality for Twitter, but also for the content provider, and most importantly for our users. So if there's a conversation already happening there, things like the PGA is a great example, or Live Nation, we've done deal with Live Nation where we're streaming concerts. Like, these things are, again, driven by data to inform our strategy to make sure that we're actually providing the right content for the right people.
Well, when you talk about targeting also, let's think back to the news of recent days. Facebook about to go into original programming, some deals come announced. Last week, Apple putting their first show on the platform. What I'm wondering is their ability to target consumers, given the data they have about their user bases. Would you guys see that as a game changer?
So we did a Liga MX deal with Facebook earlier this year where we're streaming live Liga MX deal games on Facebook. And we're able to build that off of our Deportes page. So we already have a built-in fan base on our Deportes page on Facebook. And we're able to target our fans on Facebook and send them to our Liga MX games. And those Liga MX games we're actually producing in English. So we're able to target a new bilingual English language audience for Spanish, Mexican League Soccer on Facebook. So it's definitely a bit of a game changer for us because it's a new audience that we can find. And our ratings are up on Deportes on air, and at the same time, we're finding a new audience on Facebook. So it's definitely, a bit of a game changer.
I think it's both finding the built-in audience, but then what makes it, I think, actually a game changer is when you can find the concentric circles of peer groups and colleagues and ancillary and secondary and tertiary audience groups that actually allow you to expand your base into a much bigger segment. We produced a long lifetime ago the Justin Bieber movie, Never Say Never, and we thought the movie would be just for his fans. And what ended up happening was through social, we were able to reach additional layers of groups that we never knew existed. So if we can use technology intelligently to expand the target audience into discovery as part of that promotional platform, I think that's where it gets really exciting and interesting.
Agreed. Good point.
I think just the challenge, I think, will be is how much do you let them engage with your content elsewhere, right? This is the battle that needs to happen, right? If you relegate all of your, so David actually in the panel before last talked about the #1 goal for them from CBS, the chief revenue officer said engagement of the content, that's the high bar. But if all your content engagement is happening outside of your apps, outside of your ecosystem, that I mean, to me as a media company executive, that would worry me a little bit, right? So how much can you bring into your own? But of course you've got to embrace it too. No media company is going to replace Facebook or Twitter or any of those. So how do you find that line? I think that's an interesting one to watch people dance over the next couple of years.
And that's where we could talk a bit more about this direct-to-consumer challenge. We've touched on things like being part of a skinny bundle, but for instance, Eric, for you at Univision, it's not just about being part of portfolios anymore, bundles. It's just putting your app place where you could have a direct relationship.
That's right. So we have the Univision Now app. It's very much like CBS All Access or HBO Go's app. We have a direct-to-consumer app. It's really evolved in the last year. We started out as a mobile-only app that was very much targeted at the live experience, but very quickly it's pivoted, and we've become very focused on the SVOD experience, more of a deep library experience, and we started programming a lot of originals, content that's not showing up on our air in the United States, and that content is actually skyrocketed in use from a VOD experience. And what's interesting is, 90% of our viewing is traditionally live on television. We're not a big VOD usage, but on our app, it's heavy VOD, and our originals are getting a ton of use. And so what we're seeing is a lot of our usage is existing cable users who are subscribing to our app and using it as an ancillary product to supplement their viewing. They're television heavy cable users who want more Univision. They're Univision fans who want more. And so we're investing more there as really an upsell opportunity and going that way. But speaking of data more, we're learning fast, and that's what you learn by having a direct-to-consumer app experience. I don't see it as a replacement product. I see it as a learning product. We're learning what works and what doesn't. We're learning more about our customer because we never had that data before, right? And for the first time as a media company, we have real insight into our consumer that we never had before. And I actually think that's good for us, and it's good for our partners because we can translate that into learnings we can take back to our partners. Excuse me.
And it's that data that I think is something that unites all of you. You're better able to get a read on your consumers, what they're watching, how they're watching. Do you guys all see this as something that's going to be big in terms of whether you're a programmer, producer, or distributor of content?
Well, to me, the 30-second ad, its shelf life is kind of 60 years, I think. Its shelf life is kind of dying. So to me, having data and knowing what works to try new things, I mean, there's a lot of brands, and we're part of the Turner Ad Lab stuff where we're trying lower thirds, we're trying squeeze credits, we're trying content in the interface or ads in the interface, in the video, and over the video. You've got to try these new ways. You can't just keep reducing ad load, increasing the price, or increasing ad load and decrease. It doesn't work, right? So to me, if you're going to be creative and figure out the new ways to monetize, whether it's through sponsorships or traditional ads or things that maybe you've tried elsewhere, you've got to have data. So you're not going to win if you don't have the data. Obviously, it helps for shows too. Netflix is creating shows that are bang on target just on data. So to me, it's the new oil, right, for TV.
But I do think it's scary when we try to drive the creative process by data. I don't think that there is a show that you can make based off of a menu of triangulating data on the back end. I think what makes a great show is an incredible creative vision by a showrunner and a director and a cast of characters who are telling a whole unique story. I think that the data that sort of can inform that is just our data, our lens is always, has this ever been seen before? Have we ever told this story before? If the answer is no, then we're interested in it. But I think it's scary when there's this notion that you can create a show based off of data points.
So this will surprise everyone, but there's a pretty sizable news and political conversation on Twitter.
What?
Yeah, so unbelievable. So we've obviously, we partner very, thank you. We partner very closely with Bloomberg in the past, like doing things like the debates and things like that. So, again, going back to understanding what's actually happening native in our environment, we partner with Bloomberg and we're going to have a 24/7 news channel that's going to go directly through Twitter, which is produced specifically for us, and it's going to be distributed only on Twitter, which is incredible, and it's going to bring in, the most relevant tweets. There'll be plenty of content, no doubt, from various people. But it goes back to the whole thing of I agree sometimes data can be scary, but it can also, it's helped inform our strategy very, very significantly, especially with that.
Yeah, data is an important part of what we do as a company. We want to make it easier for people to find the things that they want to buy and the things they want to research. And from a video service perspective, we use data to personalize the experience. We want our customers to find great content to watch. They're sitting in their homes or with their mobile device or sitting in front of the TV looking for premium content to watch. And sometimes it's a little bit daunting to go and try to figure out what it is that is interesting to you. And our algorithms utilize data to help surface content that we think will be relevant to our customers, which helps drive engagement and their satisfaction with our platform.
And Richard, I'm curious how audience data plays into channels, because you're able, I would assume, to say, oh, HBO is picking up well versus Stars and this, and in a way you're kind of this MSO, but you probably have even maybe richer data than whatever, say, Comcast gets through its set-tops in terms of making decisions about what channels you put on and how much you pay.
Well, we certainly take a look at what our customers are watching from a perspective of as we look to acquire more content. And so, and I'm talking about from a channels perspective. And so we see British programming do very well with Acorn TV, which is one of the third-party subscriptions you can find on Amazon Video. And as we looked at that, we thought, hey, there's an opportunity, our customers really like, as one genre, British programming. And that kind of informs us and led us to go out and look for more British programming services to go do deals with and partner with. And so we recently launched with PBS Masterpiece as a service, and it's doing really well. It's been a few months since it's been available. So it's just one example where we look at kind of what's available, what our customers are looking for. And we also look at searches on Amazon. And so we, earlier this year, launched an anime service that we created ourselves. And that's when we decided to do that, when we looked at a bunch of queries that are happening on Amazon.com where people are looking for specific anime titles. And we had a gap in that area in our channel's business. And so we made the decision to go out and create a service ourselves to offer that selection to our customers.
It's interesting. We are producing Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan for Amazon, and when we pitched that show, had a number of different buyers to choose from. And one of the reasons we actually wanted to partner with Amazon was we knew that the Tom Clancy readership lived on this platform and that genre was really popular on Amazon. So for us, you obviously want the deal to be great, but you also want the show to be successful and to find an audience where it'll be well received. And so I think it's a good converse point in that I think as a seller and somebody who's creating content, you also want to find the right home. And so we're also thinking about what's the right environment for our show. And for that particular show, we knew the readership and that audience and that demographic lived on the platform.
It's a great example.
And for you at Hulu, original programming tends to get a lot of attention, but if you're the one licensing the content from the libraries, that's the stuff that I think probably doesn't get enough attention in terms of, it takes a lot of eyeball time, shall we say. And so is there patterns in data of the consumption of these kinds of shows on your platform that factors into knowing what to buy and not?
Absolutely. We are incredibly data-driven in our licensing decisions, and we look at on-platform data extensively, but also what's going on elsewhere. So we might be looking at piracy. We might be looking at sort of on Hulu search, but also off Hulu search. Nielsen, social, kind of whatever we can get our hands on to better inform, is this programming that people are looking for, talking about, would want to watch if we had it on Hulu? And if yes, sort of how many people and how much, because that helps inform sort of what's our appetite to spend to license it. I do think, and I think echo what Amy said, as powerful as data is, and it is essential to use data to inform decisions, it's sort of irresponsible not to if you have it. There are also limits to it, and data can be sort of tortured into telling any story you want it to tell. And again, sort of dangerous when trying to use too much data to sort of engineer a hit, which I think tends to not work very well. And so I think it is, as important as it is to use, it's also important to recognize its limitations.
By the way, just a reminder, for if you see on the screens, if you have any questions, I've got the iPad here, you can send it over, and I'm happy to ask our panelists, but I've also got plenty myself. I'm curious what you guys think in terms of when we talk about all these different OTT flowers blooming, there is again that competition for attention with the typical traditional pay TV world. Is it a zero-sum game? Does the gain that, say, Hulu or Amazon is going to have, does that has to come at the expense of the traditional pay TV world, or is this actually a kind of an expanding pie?
I think it is absolutely an opportunity to grow the whole ecosystem. And so I don't think we, as Amazon, view kind of the world as a zero-sum game from that perspective. There's so much great content, as we've been talking about, that's out there that's available, and so many sources to go watch that content. And that's great for consumers. And so I think what we're seeing is video consumption around the world is not going down. People continue to look to video across all the screens that they use as one of the core aspects of entertainment, wherever they are. And so I think it's exciting to be part of an industry where we are hopefully continuing to grow it for our customers around the world.
Yeah, and I'd just say as well, like just from a consumer standpoint, myself, like a few years ago, I'd hoped that this whole industry would mean that I'm paying less money for TV type content, but it's the complete opposite. Like I have my Hulu subscription, I have my Amazon, I have my Netflix, I have everything. So I'm actually spending more money than I was 2-3 years ago. So from a consumer standpoint, though, I think that's wonderful because the type of content you can get, the breadth of content across all these platforms, make them all critical. Like for me as a TV consumer, I can't do without any of them.
Well, if you add up the amount of hours people spend in front of a screen, it's at some point it's probably more hours than there are in the day because they're on the phone and the laptop and the TV simultaneously. There's kind of all this multitasking happening, so it seems like people are just adding more and more and more hours.
Yeah, I would say it's an attention economy, right? And you only have so much attention to go after. And I don't think media can look at itself as not competing with video games. I mean, Twitch, which is an in-between, right? You have to look at the whole attention span. And people are watching more at different times in different places. So creating enormous opportunity. And with connectivity and 5G, you can get anytime, anywhere. You know, I was at watching coffee and the guy's watching the game at a bar, right? That was unthinkable not long ago. So the opportunity is there, but the attention is the zero-sum game. And you're fighting against more than just media. And I think how you engage them and, again, get them on board, it is critical. And I think that's where a lot of the innovation is going to have to happen.
On my ride over here today, the Uber driver told me that he had just subscribed to YouTube TV, the new subscription service. And he told me that he had been a cord never for the last 7 years. He was a millennial, and that he had only watched YouTube really for the past 7 years. But that two things. One, news had put him over the edge because he wanted live news. And two, he spent so much time in the car, he wanted to be able to watch television in his Uber. Not while he was driving, but while he was waiting for pickups. And because he could watch it anywhere he was on his cellular device, kind of those new areas of being able to watch anywhere, anytime, those over-the-top subscriptions drove him to subscribe. So I think that there is opportunity, and new entrants are creating that opportunity.
Yeah, the incrementality is awesome, right? So if you look at the Comey hearing last week, which is incredible, Nielsen, I think the stats came out that I think 7% of the people watching on TV were aged 18 to 35. On Twitter, we saw 88% were aged 18 to 35, which is incredible. So that goes back to maybe there's people who are at work or sat in the bathroom or something like that where they want to consume content, but now they can, right? It's providing people the opportunity to consume content where and whenever they want to.
By the way, we were, we with a joke almost talking about cars, but the truth is, given where autonomous vehicles is going, aren't autos really the next big frontier for OTT? I mean, it's not next year, but in all seriousness, is this something that your companies even think about at this point?
We're better at watching TV than driving cars, so we know that. So it's a good thing. This is a good cause. We should get that to be the next living room.
I can't wait to never drive again.
But for instance, Hulu is already looking at VR. These are bets that what might seem so distant really often aren't.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at VR from a content perspective as well as weaving storytelling in the narrative process into new platforms. And every director and filmmaker we're working with wants to experiment. So I think there's huge opportunity.
Yeah, and as a distributor, you want to be on any screen of any kind, wherever it is.
Sure.
So when there's screens in cars, we want to be there.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is a few years ago, it might have just been assumed that if VR really started to get critical mass, that the usual brands will be the ones presenting just like they would on TV, but that's not necessarily the case. And I think when you look at how Netflix, Amazon, Hulu are sort of playing in 4K, VR, and all that, kind of tells you some things. But wanted to shift gears, another whole thing that I think as we sort of go over this dizzying array of options that is OTT, discovery becomes an issue. There's so much out there. How do you connect people with what they want to see? Anyone want to take that?
I think it's a huge challenge right now. And
yeah.
I think you were mentioning spending more and buying all of these subscriptions. But it's a challenge to find content when it's spread across 5 different subscriptions on all these platforms. How do you find it? How do you keep track of it? How do you know where it is? I mean, I think probably everyone in this room has bought a movie, through your cable subscription or Amazon or Apple, and then found out later it was already on Netflix, right? I mean, I've done that probably, I don't know how many times. And that's annoying as a consumer. Or the fact of, you start watching something, you want to catch up on it, and you're trying to find out where the back series is, and you're trying to find out, where the in-season stack is or where the library is. Those challenges, have not been overcome yet. And I think that challenge needs to be fixed.
I actually think what's kind of exciting, though, is I don't think now great content can actually really rely on great word of mouth, which means you could, and we've seen this play out time and time again, you could spend $50 million to open a movie, and if it's not good, it's not going to work. And I think the same thing can be said of television, and we've seen this. It's interesting to me that now, if we're working with Amazon or Netflix or TNT or whomever, they don't spend this huge amount of money long lead to tell you something's coming. Once it's live and you can actually tune in to see it and hopefully generate great word of mouth, then they're going to tell you to go watch it. So I think organic word of mouth for great content is back. It's like the old days of marketing, which is sort of exciting because then if you create great content, people will find it and see it based on their peer group of recommendation thanks to the technology that now exists.
Netflix has done some interesting stuff around this in the last few months even. So one is their screensavers. So on 10-foot now, screensaver comes up showing really cool content. To me, every app, if you haven't put that in your app, get that in there. Number 2 is when you go on a 10-foot screen, the devices, you go on the PDP page, they just bypass it. They start playing the video. I don't know if it's on all platforms yet, but about 3 seconds in, which is too short in my opinion, because now if I go back, but it's playing the video in the background. So forget the discovery part. I'm just going to give it to you. And then I was on the iPad last week scrolling through, and it was column, kind of as normal. And then all of a sudden, a full minus a little bit of a border, and the video just started playing right in the interface. So again, you didn't even need to click on it. It was almost full screen as it was. So to me, bypassing that and just saying, here it is, and pushing it on them as well, because the angst of that decision is a problem. So finding the right content, but sometimes just push it on them too, I think.
Yeah, discovery is one of the challenges when you have so much content, and I think one of the reasons why our customers have taken to our channels offering so much is because we're integrating everything into one experience. And so there isn't this need to go navigate through the multiple apps that Eric is talking about, each of which have different UIs, and the quality of the streaming can potentially be different across them as well, based on the technology platforms that they're on. And so we're integrating everything in this one seamless experience through our app. It's available across 650 plus devices that really makes it easy for our customer to go and find the content that they're looking for. And I think, Jason, is what you're describing, this kind of really immersive experience. It's what many of the OTT players are trying to do to, quite frankly, I think, get closer to what TV is. And we are used to turning on our pay TV service and video starts playing and you can flip around very quickly. And so with OTT, it's historically been a little different. It's been more static, and you need to go proactively go find something. And with some of the experiences that many of the services have, if you take a look at what we have on our Fire TV device, we have this very rich, immersive experience where the content starts playing in the background, and then you can swipe and choose other content to watch as well, that then it tries to draw you in and see if that's something that you want to do. And so I think it's all of us trying to do different things to try to make it easier for people to just start watching what it is they want.
Well, we have just a minute left, so really, I kind of want to ask, we've covered a lot of ground here, skimmed a lot of surface. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that is sort of a significant trend in this OTT space that we got to tell people to keep an eye on? Have I stumped you all? We have covered a lot. Let's pat ourselves on the back. How about a hand for our panelists?